In this video, we're going to just learn how to set up problems to do algebra. And so you need to know what variables are. And so variables are just the letters that are used in algebra problems that you basically are solving for. So they might be X, Y, and it doesn't really matter. All they're doing is really just representing a number. And so the point in algebra is really to solve for the variable. And so at the end of what you're trying to do, you would have, the variable x equals some sort of number, x equals 3 or something. So the whole point really of algebra is just to get to this stage where you solve for what the variable in the problem equals. But they are just representing numbers. So anything you can do with a regular number, you can do with a variable. So you can do, x plus 2 or 3y minus 1. This means 3 times y minus 1. So anything you can do with a regular number, mathematically, you can do with a variable. I'm going to pause and put some stuff up on the board here. So I've put some words up on the board here that when you're doing algebra problems, especially if they're like word problems, this is going to help you if you're familiar with these words. So whenever you see the word what or how much, that's really representing the variable. And I've put an example up there as n. So that's what you're usually trying to solve for. Is and has means equals. Sum, more, plus, increase means addition. Difference, less, minus, decrease means subtraction. Product, times, or of means multiplication. And quotient or per means division. So again, here we're just learning to set the problems up. So we need to be able to write them mathematically before we learn how to actually solve them. And we'll learn how to solve them in the next video. But you need to be familiar so that when you see something that says, what's the difference, that you know that you're going to be doing a subtraction problem and you'll know how to set that problem up. So now we're going to do a couple of examples. So here's an example problem. What is the difference between 50 and 20? And so if you know what the word difference means, you know that there's going to be a subtraction involved. Now, algebra can also just involve a little bit of common sense, right? But let's use this to figure out what we're going to do. So what is our variable? So we're going to say what, we're just going to use n as our variable, is means equals. So n equals the difference between 50 and 20. So we know we're going to subtract, and it should make logical sense that we're going to subtract by saying 50 minus 20. So what is the difference between 50 and 20? Well, 50 minus 20 is 30. So our answer is 30. Our variable, or what is the difference, is 30. Here's another one. What number is 7 less than 12? So what number is 7 less than 12? So we're going to do some sort of subtraction. And so if you think about it, 7 less than 12, so 7 fewer than 12. So we're going to subtract off 7 from 12. So the subtraction is going to be 12 minus 7. So what number is 7 less than 12? It's just 12 minus 7, or 5. So this one now says, what number is 7 more than 12? So more means we're going to add. So what number is 7 more than 12? 7 plus 12. So what number is 7 more than 12? 19. So this one now says, what number decreased by 7 is 12? So let's use our words here. What is our variable? What number decreased by 7. So decreased means we're going to have some sort of subtraction. So what number decreased by 7? So minus 7 decreased by 7 is means equals 12. What number decreased by 7 is 12 equals 12. And so in the next part 2 video, I will show you how to actually solve this mathematically. But for now, let's just try and think about it logically. What number, if we take away 7, is going to give you 12? Well, the answer is going to be 19, because 19 minus 7 equals 12. For this one, it says 7 times what number is 21? So 7 times means multiplication. What number, that's our variable, is equals 21? 7 times what equals 21? Again, we'll figure this out mathematically later, but if you think about it logically, what do you multiply by 7 in order to get 21? And the answer is 3. One thing that I just want to note while we're on multiplication is lots of times you'll see it will be written maybe like this, 7n, which if you have a number and a variable beside it, that means multiplication. So 7 times n is the same thing as if it's just written 7n. So whenever they're written just next to each other without any sort of mathematical operation, it means multiplication. This means 7 times n equals 21. So n would equal 3. So in this one, it says, what is 25% of 60? And so here's where it's important to remember what of means. Of means multiplication. When you're thinking in your head or you see it written on the paper that says of, it's probably going to be multiplication problem. What is, so what, that's our variable, is 25%. Now you need to know how to write that as a decimal number. So if you don't know how, you need to watch the video on percentages. So I'm just going to assume you know that. We write that as 0.25. Of means times or multiplication 60. So to figure this out, what is 25% of 60? It's 0.25 times 60. And so the answer is 15. So here's a problem that looks kind of complicated when you first read it, but if you really just kind of look through it and apply what we know so far, we'll be able to figure it out and do step by step. And often the key with any sort of algebra or formula is write down what you know, solve for what you don't know. So this says Joe has $7. Mark has 8 times as much as Joe. Tim has $3 less than Mark. How much does Tim have? So we're just going to use variables as with their first names. So Tim, because that's who we want to know, right? Ultimately, how much does Tim have? We're going to make that a T. Tim has means equals 3 less than Mark. And so we know this is going to be some sort of subtraction. And it's 3 less than Mark. So it would be Mark, we're just going to put as an M, minus 3. So how much does Tim have? Tim has M minus 3, whatever Mark has minus 3. But we don't know what Mark has yet, do we? So we need to solve for M, solve for Mark, before we can figure out what Tim has. So how much does Mark have? Mark has, M for Mark, has equals 8 times as much as Joe. 8 times J for Joe. So whatever Joe has, multiply it by 8. That's what Mark has. Okay? So now we need to know, well, what does Joe have? Joe has, J has equals 7. So we started with what we wanted to know, Tim, and we wrote down that equation. And then we said, well, before we can figure out what Tim needs, we obviously need to know what Mark has. So then we wrote down the equation for Mark. Well, before we know what Mark has, we have to figure out what Joe has. Well, they've given us that Joe has $7. So now we can just plug this back in and then solve for Tim. So here J equals 7. Joe has 7. So we're just going to plug that into this formula. M equals 8 times J. So M equals 8 times 7 because Joe equals 7. So Mark equals, if you do the multiplication, 56. So now, but we don't want to know how much Mark has. We want to know how much Tim has. So, but now we can solve for Tim. Tim, just plug it in. M equals 56. 56 minus 3. So we're just plugging this into the formula that we created. T equals 56 minus 3 equals 53. So how much money does Tim have? $53. So just write it out step by step, knowing how to set up these algebra problems, and then you can solve them fairly easily.